Tonight on CFTK-TV, a program member in Kitwanga testified against the Government Operations Committee. There's an increase in HIV cases around the country, and Joe Biden pardons the convictions of his son.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. Well, the co-founder of the Tea Creek Farm Training Program in Kitwanga had the chance to testify to the Government Operations Committee as part of hearings on the government's Indigenous procurement practices. And here's CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews with the details.
Jacob Beaton was invited by MP Taylor Bachrach to speak during recent Indigenous procurement practices hearings. Beaton's Tea Creek Farm Training Program stems from his vision of healthy, resilient Indigenous economies based around abundant local food.
Our past is our future is how I sum up Tea Creek. That's the vision. And then the nuts and bolts is retraining our people to take those places within our economy from top to bottom.
Beaton emphasized the need for Indigenous-led businesses.
Simple definition of Indigenous-led is that if Indigenous people are making the decisions at every level of an organization, those are going to be Indigenous decisions. They're going to be aligned with Indigenous values and perspectives, and they're going to benefit the community. They're going to create local jobs. They're going to create jobs for other Indigenous people and opportunities to advance. But the Indigenous-led standard is not embraced anywhere in federal government that I've come across.
Bachrach said in a statement that Tea Creek's impact on our region cannot be overstated, and Jacob's insights on Indigenous procurement are extremely relevant to the committee's work. The Tea Creek Farm Training Program was also featured in a documentary film this year. The film is titled Tea Creek and is available to watch for free on CBC Gem. For CFTK TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And over the weekend, an alert was sent out to notify the residents of northern BC that Highway 37A has been placed under an avalanche advisory for a few days. And the area in question is between Stewart and Mizziatin Junction, and initially came into effect at 11 p.m. on Sunday. With the significant amount of snow that covered northern BC on the weekend, along with the temperatures steadily going up, those factors can create conditions that increase the chance of an avalanche happening. But even with the advisory being in effect, the highway is still open to all traffic. And the advisory's currently set time to be removed is said to be at 6 a.m. tomorrow, but whether or not it actually happens will likely depend on the conditions. Well, skiers can now get excited for upcoming powder days as Hudson Bay Mountain managed to open early for the season with a bonus weekend ahead of their prescribed opening date.
Hudson Bay Mountain has benefited from the recent dumps of snow with an early opening. The mountain opened for a bonus weekend this past weekend, with 3 of 4 lifts operational and 50% off lift tickets. The mountain struggled with a power outage on Saturday, but was back in action on Sunday. Skiers and snowboarders were warned that it's still early mountain conditions, so watch for trees, twigs, and rocks. They're now closed for the week, with official opening day being Saturday, December 7th. And for James Mountain in Terrace, uphill access is open, and they have a tentative opening weekend listed as December 7th as well. For CFTK News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And the Kitimat RCMP has once again publicized a report that lists most of the incidents that they responded to or covered, with this edition documenting the later days of November. And one part of the report said that at one point a bus that was driving on Highway 37 close to Onion Lake really early in the morning ended up colliding with a moose. Luckily, the officers that responded to the incident found that the drivers and passengers didn't suffer any injuries due to the crash, although it wasn't clear the moose managed to escape serious injury since it ended up leaving the scene pretty quickly. Well, the amount of food recalls hasn't had a vast increase this year, but experts are not predicting for those numbers to decrease. Kamal Karamali from CTV News has more.
Here at this Toronto produce market, between the friendly
everything on sale
and sometimes fast-talking farmers, there's a common focus on keeping everything fresh.
We just take more precaution.
Especially after growing concerns over countrywide recalls.
But the cucumber recall, and I thought, oh, that's not good. I wonder if farmers around here are going to have to
not bring their cucumbers from there.
This past week alone, a brand of cucumbers recalled after worry they may be contaminated with salmonella. Carrots recalled over E. coli risks, and consumers told to throw out this brand of enoki mushrooms over potential listeria.
The bacteria that are causing these food recalls are the usual suspects.
But food recalls have stayed steady over the past few years, with 160 recalls so far this year, not far off from what we've seen the last couple of years, and nowhere near the over 250 recalls from 2021. What is worrying food safety experts is the future.
We are going to see more outbreaks and more contamination events.
There is concern, though, that extreme weather events caused by climate change and larger shipments of food traveling longer distances will lead to environments that cause an increase in foodborne illnesses.
What we need to do as scientists is come up with better ways to treat the foods that we consume.
Food experts want more pressure on companies testing foods before distribution or making a larger shift towards indoor farming.
With much more controlled agricultural environments where they eliminate a lot of these factors that are causing the pathogens.
For farmers, the solution is simple.
Support small and local.
Something that's worked for them for generations. Kamal Koramali, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up next, why the RCMP are using body cams on police officers. Welcome back. Well, there has been a few issues revolving around body cameras on police officers around the nation, but the RCMP are still sure that these devices will give a broader scope on clarity between themselves and to the public. Alex Carpra from CTV News has more.
This social media video has been viewed thousands of times. A bystander captured this as police confronted a suspect. According to the chair of the Winnipeg Police Board, it doesn't tell the whole story.
That video doesn't really show the full context of the interaction between the individual and the Winnipeg Police Service. So body-worn cameras wouldn't have prevented a situation like yesterday, but would provide accountability around what transpired.
Chambers says Winnipeg police are waiting for feedback now that Manitoba and BC RCMP started using body cameras for some of its officers last week. This is in line with the RCMP's efforts across the country to be more transparent and accountable, according to that police service earlier this month.
We anticipate the body-worn cameras will deliver tangible benefits to the communities that we serve and improve safety not only to our officers but members of the public.
One former Ontario Police Commissioner says police-worn body cameras are a must for all officers.
It is a benefit in many ways, whether it be digital technology, cameras, audio, better weapons, etc. So how do you not issue those to police services that are trying to do their best to protect themselves and the public?
Others believe body-worn cameras will not restore trust between police and the public and do not provide the full picture.
Are the body-worn cameras going to ever give us a full depiction of an incident or a scenario? No. Rather, body-worn camera footage is just a piece of the broader puzzle, which could help us to better understand a situation.
Now, it's unlikely that the public will ever see any footage from body cameras during police interactions due to laws here in Canada. But during their national conference, the RCMP said there are rare cases when footage will be released due to public interest. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
And turning to tonight's weather, the Prince Rupert area has a special weather statement in place with heavy rains and winds expected up until Wednesday morning, with the strongest winds being today, and you should see nearly 150 millimeters of rain in total, with winds coming from the southeast at 80 kilometers per hour, gusting to 100 over the coastal sections. And as for the temperature, expect it to be 8 degrees. In the Terrace and Kitimat region should have periods of rain with winds from the south at 20 kilometers per hour and a temperature of 4 degrees. In the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District has a freezing rain warning that started this morning, where icy and slippery sections may create tougher driving conditions and could create power outages. And it should be partially cloudy tonight with a 30% chance of showers early in the evening, and the low will be 1 degree. And now on to your weekly weather forecast. On the north coast, expect some heavy rain tomorrow with about 30 to 40 millimeters as well as heavy winds. The high will be 9 degrees for the next 3 days, followed by a little bit of a drop off, and the low will be Saturday night at 5 degrees. The Terrace and Kitimat region will have a break from the snow over the weekend with 3 days of rain, including the high at 5 degrees on Wednesday. However, the snow will return on Friday, and the low will also be Saturday night at -1. And finally, the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should have rain for the next 4 days, with the high being tomorrow at 6 degrees, followed by a chance of flurries on Saturday, and of course, Saturday night will be the low at -6. And now on to your Northwest Roadside Report. Highway 16 has a travel advisory with black ice between Doreen and Walcott, flooding in Skidgate, utility work in Vanderhoof, slippery sections as well. Highway 37 has freezing rain conditions and black ice between Kitwanga and Miziaden Junction. Heavy snow and freezing rain between Miziaden Junction and Belle 2. High avalanche hazards between Belle 2 and Bob Quinn Lake. High avalanche hazards between Good Hope Lake and south of Jade City. Bridge maintenance north of Miziaden Junction, as well as slippery sections. Highway 37A has heavy snow and freezing rain. Potential road closure for avalanche control. Highway 118 and the Nishka Highway have slippery sections, and the Nishka Highway also has freezing rain advisory, and Telegraph Creek Road also has slippery sections. And these are what the cameras were looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, Pierre Poilievre wants the Trudeau government to make changes at the border. And welcome back. Well, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre is demanding for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government to make a number of changes at the Canada and United States border. And Jeremy Charon from CTV News has the latest in Ottawa.
A Sunday morning call from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to strengthen Canada's border.
I'm demanding that the Trudeau government quickly present a Canada First plan to Parliament.
The leader of the official opposition proposing a list of measures including increased patrols, working with provincial law enforcement, and tech to crack down on illegal drug trafficking. He also said Canada should tighten its visa rules and cap the number of asylum seekers.
To fund a bolstered border, the Prime Minister should cut high-priced CBSA consultants and cancel the $6 billion of insulting inflationary spending, the 2-month tax trick, and the inflationary checks.
Those calls come on the heels of Trudeau's surprise meeting with Donald Trump on Friday at Mar-a-Lago to discuss Trump's threat to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian imports unless his border concerns are addressed. While talks were positive, sources tell CTV News Canada has not been given any assurance tariffs can be avoided right now, despite the government promising additional investments at the border.
We're going to be very visible so that it's seen that not only we've done the work, but that we can deploy quickly.
Ottawa has faced pressure from provinces too to strengthen the border, but premiers have also pushed the Prime Minister on another Trump priority, defense spending.
He was surprised that we had so much interest in it.
Speaking with Vashi Kapelos on CTV's Question Period in an exclusive interview, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said provincial leaders are united in pushing Canada to meet NATO's defense spending target sooner.
That's the next thing President-elect Trump will say. You need to meet your 2% NATO commitments, and he's right.
Ford says the Prime Minister did not commit to accelerating defense spending.
And opposition leader Pierre Poilievre didn't specify either when asked, if elected, how quickly a Conservative government would meet NATO's defense spending target.
Well, the chief of a central British Columbia First Nation has released a statement saying that the potential unmarked graves have been identified at the site of the former Lejac Indian residential school after they conducted geophysical survey work for around 2 years. And Lay-Wooten First Nation Chief Beverly Ketlow also said that the community also knew that there were children that were buried at the institution because many of their graves are marked in a cemetery at the residential school site. And she next said a report from a ground-penetrating radar, a magnetometry survey, identified several signals that were consistent with other discovered unmarked burials. In the former Lejac Indian Residential School, which is located east of Fraser Lake, was in operation between the years of 1922 and 1976. Well, a sizable increase in HIV cases have now been diagnosed, and it comes at a bad time where services to treat these cases are reported to be underwhelming. Here's Colton Prail of CTV.
Canada's HIV epidemic is getting worse. New data shows 2,400 Canadians were diagnosed in 2023, a 35% jump.
Not only are we failing to meet our global commitments, in my opinion, we're failing Canadians, 2,400 Canadians.
What was a fatal diagnosis is now treatable, and those saved by medication are pushing others to seek care.
Given a second chance, new medications was around for that, and the best way to give back is to go back into that field and push that message out to community.
But not everyone is getting help.
Hearing that 15% of people can't access medication, it's not right. It needs to change.
The spike is happening across the country, but in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, rates are triple the next highest province, and it's Indigenous communities bearing the brunt.
Today, HIV is a chronic illness. People are living with HIV and with medication and treatment and support. But why are Indigenous people not?
Unlike other provinces, in the prairies, those most affected are intravenous drug users, and more recently, young women and children, where rates are climbing.
And so at a time when we have more people acquiring HIV, we have less services to provide to those people, and we need help.
Advocates are calling for $36 million over the next 5 years to fund community and Indigenous-led supports, and an additional $50 million annually for provincial health care.
And the second season of the PWHL just started this weekend. And after a successful first season, all things seem to be pointing towards a successful sequel. Natalie Johnson from CTV has more on why this league is so important.
As the fans filtered in for Game 1 of Season 2, the crowd was pumped for the return of the PWHL.
The empowerment, the inclusivity, it's just an awesome thing to see for the younger generation growing up.
The PWHL has brought something to women's sports that we haven't seen before. As a little girl, I didn't have a sports team I could look up to unless it was a male-dominated sport, and now we do.
They can be able to play hockey like boys can too.
Nearly 8,000 fans packing the stands inside the Coca-Cola Coliseum. On the new ice, a new name, a new logo, and a new look for Toronto's team, now known as the Scepters, facing off against the Boston Fleet in the season opener.
We've been waiting for this for so many years. It's about time that we have something for us. It means so much.
I think it's very inspiring. I play as well, so to see other women that are getting to play professionally and have a career like that is really cool. I love to see that women can have their dreams of playing professional hockey, and I love that we can also have the opportunity to play as well.
Boston was last year's lowest scoring team, but took an early lead in the first. Sarah Nurse tying it up shorthanded to the delight of the crowd. Hannah Miller pulling the Scepters ahead with a power play goal with less than 2 minutes to go. And an empty netter by Emma Malte sealed the deal with just seconds left to defeat Boston 3-1. Score aside, a win for women's sport, appreciated by both the youngest of players.
I feel very happy that not only boys can play, but girls can too.
And their parents.
They just love being a part of this. They think this is amazing. It's inspiring and it's positive, and it's just going to bring all the women forward and power, girl power all the way.
The power of the PWHL once again palpable with the start of the Scepter season. Natalie Johnson, CTV News, Toronto.
And now we turn our attention to the stock market. The Canadian dollar is down 0.2 of a penny. The price of gold is down $22.50. Oil is up 10 cents. Natural gas is down 15 cents. Aluminum is up $7. In Toronto, the TSX is down 57.67 points. The Venture Index is down 1.25. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 128.65, and NASDAQ is up 185.78. Still ahead, U.S. President Joe Biden pardons his son's gun and tax convictions. Welcome back to our last segment. Well, researchers show evidence that the food you consume in plastic containers or bottles can leach tiny plastic particles into your food, especially when heated up or washed in the dishwasher.
Thinking of refilling that plastic water bottle you bought from the convenience store? Or reusing the takeout container from last night's dinner? Researchers say you may want to think twice.
These single-use plastics, if they're used over and over and over again, the risk of leaching out certain chemicals and exposure to microplastics increases as you use these products, which are intended to only be used one time.
We've seen the recent headlines. The Washington Post declaring reusing plastic water bottles and to-go containers, scientists say that's a bad idea. And The Atlantic saying, throw out your black plastic spatula. They cite various studies that suggest harmful chemicals, including carcinogens and plastic bits, are leaching into your food. Studies suggest even washing sturdier, reusable plastic containers on the hot cycle in the dishwasher could be hazardous. But experts warn this research is only preliminary.
Me personally, I have not thrown out every plastic item in the house. You do what you can, and I'm not telling everyone in America to throw out every single plastic item in their house either. I do want to emphasize that it is nearly impossible to get away from microplastics. It is in our soil, it is in the air, it's in clothing fibers, it's manufactured in so many different things, food casings. It really is everywhere.
The big takeaway amid all this concern? Experts say try to limit how much plastic you use by using glass containers instead and drinking from metal straws instead of plastic.
The research that is still developing in the area of plastics and the safety of microplastics is still ongoing. So right now, experts are recommending to limit plastic use where you can and use things as directed. So if something is directed to be a single-use product, it should be used that way.
And for our last story of the day is about Hunter Biden, who is the son of U.S. President Joe Biden, who was pardoned by his father just weeks before his scheduled sentencing on gun and tax convictions. This comes after the president decided not to interfere back in June, but has since changed his mind over the weekend.
Overnight, a sudden reversal. President Biden issuing a full and unconditional pardon of his son Hunter, ending a legal saga that the president now says was politically motivated. Biden had long promised he would not interfere with his son's cases, telling our David Muir in June such a pardon was not an option.
Will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
But now Biden says he believes his son was selectively and unfairly prosecuted, writing in a statement no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong.
I'm extremely proud of my son Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know.
Hunter Biden was convicted in June on federal gun charges for lying on a federal form about his drug addiction when he bought this Colt revolver in 2018. And in September, he pleaded guilty in a last-minute deal to 9 tax-related charges, accused of avoiding paying $1.4 million in taxes while living lavishly, taxes he had since paid back. He was scheduled to be sentenced later this month in each case, potentially facing more than a decade in prison. But now Hunter, seen with his father over this past holiday weekend, will face none of that. The president's pardon is sweeping, covering not just those charges, but any uncharged crimes between 2014 and 2024.
That'll be all for tonight's cast. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.